The Constitution as envisioned by its framers and its contemporary interpretation. I think this topic was perhaps slightly wrongly chosen. I would like, with the permission of the chair, to modify it to Constitution as envisaged by its framers and its contemporary misinterpretations. We must remember one thing. Constitution is a way of life. And if you keep that in mind, it's a way of life for a nation. And therefore, we have to envision what was envisioned by our framers and what is it that we are seeing around us today. Then we realize, how the life has changed from what was, expected to be. But this is not my thinking alone. Dr. Ambedkar, the great visionary, I call him a prophet. On 4th of November 1948, he has these words to say. While everybody recognizes the necessity of the diffusion of constitutional morality for the peaceful working of a democratic constitution, there are two things interconnected with it which are not, unfortunately, generally recognized. One is that the form of administration has a close connection with the form of the constitution. Now, this is very important. Form of the constitution has a close connection with the form of the constitution. The form of the administration must be appropriate to and in the same sense as the form of the constitution. Now he wants. The other is that it is perfectly possible to pervert the constitution without changing its form by merely changing the form of the administration and to make it inconsistent and opposed to the spirit of the constitution. Now that's why I call him a prophet. 4th of November 1948, this man had the vision of India in 2026. And that's what he really said. Current scenario proves him right, according to me. But why was Ambedkar so skeptical about future of India 78 years ago? Because he felt that there was complete absence of constitutional morality, not amongst the majority of any community, but throughout the whole. By constitutional morality, he meant a paramount reverence for the forms of the Constitution. Einstein had once said that you must be prepared to die for the Constitution, every citizen. That's the kind of a feeling, that's the kind of a constitutional reverence which Ambedkar had in mind. It must be combined with right to open speech, of action subject to definite legal controls, and unrestrained censure of those very authorities as to their public acts. Now, all this is completely missing today. We are today living, unfortunately, in a country where I say many a times jokingly that our power of rational thinking has been taken away and our courage has been taken away somehow. So that's something which is very troublesome, and Ambedkar was aware about this. He was of the opinion that constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment, but it must be cultivated, as he felt that our people have yet to learn it. He bitterly said, democracy in India is only a top dressing of an Indian soil, which is essentially undemocratic. Look at this man. 1948, he's telling this. We have all forgotten. Have we cultivated that feeling, that sentiment after 7 decades? In my respectful submission, no. But I may be wrong, because I have extremely hard views. While 1975 to 1977 was a declared emergency by Mrs. Gandhi, and we must all condemn it. Today we are witnessing since 2014 an undeclared emergency, and there is no end in sight of that emergency. And this is something which is extremely serious today, because we all have to ponder, we all have to introspect that what's wrong, what's happening in the country. We must speak about it, we must feel the pain that people are suffering, we must express ourselves, we must help people if we can. And we must gather the strength that likes of Mr. Aspi Chinoy and Mr. Mihir Desai reflect in courts today. I must say with great sense of regret that both the bench, with great respect to Justice Gokhale, who was one of our finest judges, both the bench and the bar have failed to stand up for people. And this is something which really is very important. Framers had chosen parliamentary democracy very advisedly over presidential form of government. What we are witnessing is today extra presidential form of government, because they preferred more responsibility to more stability. In parliamentary democracy, the assessment of responsibility of the executive they wanted was to be both daily and periodic. The daily assessment was to be done by members of parliament through questions, resolutions, no confidence motions, adjournment motions, debates on addresses. Do we see that today in our parliament? All that we see is walkouts and shouting. The whole purpose of parliamentary democracy is being defeated, something far from what was envisaged by the framers. Periodic assessment is done by electorate at the time of election, which may take place every 5 years or earlier. Unfortunately, elections are also throwing a lot of question marks on us. And the current exercise of revision, SIR, is creating more, because there are almost 3.5 crore Indians who are already declared to be non-citizens. 1.5 crore in UP alone, which is very shocking. I mean, and the Supreme Court is not able to stand up to this kind of a fraudulent exercise which is taking place across the country. But the whole purpose is very clear. Ambedkar thought that parliamentary executive being more dependent upon a majority in parliament becomes more responsible. How wrong he was. How wrong he was. He thought parliamentary executive being more dependent upon majority in parliament becomes more responsible. Today, the majority in parliament has made the executive much more irresponsible, because they can get away with anything. Today, there is neither a daily independent assessment nor periodic majority in parliament thinks, because the periodic majority in parliament thinks it must be subservient to the government or the party. I mean, it is unthinkable that today, because you have been elected on a ticket of a particular party, you cannot speak against it, you cannot stand up against it, you cannot question it. That's not what democracy is supposed to be. So that's what has happened today. Irrespective of how unconstitutional or illegal government behaves, these members don't question a single thing in parliament. They stand up and shout in one voice, supporting the government in unison, and remain silent to all the wrongs that take place in day-to-day administration. Opposition is equally to be blamed in failing to conduct itself in a meaningful and responsible manner. They are just not able to corner the government for its omissions and commissions through daily assessments. Walkouts and shoutings are hardly going to help them keep democracy vibrant and secure. And believe you me, the constitutional framers debated on the role of opposition for a number of hours. And they felt that the opposition had a great role to play. In fact, one member, I forget his name, one member went to the extent of saying that any government which is against the opposition is an undemocratic government, and that government has no right to survive. Now that was the level of democratic values that the framers had in mind, how parliamentary democracy should function. Resultantly, government today can pass any law that it wishes, mostly without serious debates in parliament. For example, farm laws. The farm laws were passed without any debate. They were withdrawn without any debate, because the Sikhs had the courage to stand up against them. Unfortunately, the other communities have not shown that courage. CAA protest did muster some courage. But hats off to the Sikh community, which forced government of Mr. Modi to bend backwards. And that's something which is to be noticed. Very few people have realized how relevant and how important that struggle was. I can say with great sense of joy and pride that the farm leaders were acting under my legal advice. And me and Mr. Fulka and Prashant Bhushan were talking to them almost on a daily basis in my chamber. I even went where the farm leaders were agitating and saw their spirit and their anxiety as to what these farm laws will do. They were worried that if the farm laws were passed, the big businesses will take over. because some of the largest, companies of this country had started acquiring warehouses with capacity to, hold hundreds of tons, thousands of tons of, farm produce. And what they would do is that they will keep it stored there, and next year when the crop is, very good, they will release it in such a way that the prices are brought down. So they were extremely worried about it. The laws, for example, on a serious note, CAA in 2019, Citizenship Amendment Act, the new criminal laws which are passed in 2023, the UAPA Act in 2019, the NCT Amendment Act 2023, J&K Reorganization Act 2019, Waqf Amendment Act 2025, Digital Data Protection Act 2023, Electoral Bond Scheme through Finance Act. These are some of the examples where majoritarianism has, agreed to suppress the fundamental and legal rights of citizens by passing these laws. And most of these laws seriously, according to me, and the chair perhaps would agree with me, suffer from serious constitutional infirmities. And yet, the Supreme Court has had no time to either hear them, much less decide them in a particular manner. And this is something which is really a matter of great concern for us, because Supreme Court was supposed to be the ultimate, protector of our fundamental rights. More serious is the fallout of these laws. The executive, through investigating agencies and police in BJP-ruled states, is seriously endangering liberty and freedoms of citizens in many ways. From fake encounters to bulldozer demolitions, from wrongful arrests under draconian laws like UAPA, arresting critics and stand-up comedians, and for criticism of government and its leaders, have turned constitutional dreams into nightmares. Attacks on opposition leaders by misusing agencies like ED are meant to convert India into opposition Mukt Bharat. And I can assure you they will achieve this very quickly. It's not too far off. We have seen what is happening. State after state, the opposition is being marginalized. One ED director, for example, got 3 extensions in complete violation of constitutional norms and rules of business. And in fact, they passed a law for extension of his tenure when Supreme Court decided that he should no longer get an extension, which was very shocking. As against this, members of the ruling party are never investigated, much less arrested, perhaps because they all stand purified like Ganga Snan once they wear a saffron scarf. We know how many of them in Maharashtra politics have benefited by that. Many questionable politicians with pending cases have also been purified after wearing those scarves. Is this what the framers had envisaged? In my view, no. If the form of the government is modified, M-O-D-I, Modi. If the form of the government is modified, what about the form of the constitution? Framers chose a federal constitution over unitary constitution with the fond hope of existence of center and the state side by side, and each being sovereign in its own jurisdiction. India to have federation with uniformity in all basic matters to ensure unity. That was the goal. Yes, under the constitution, center has greater powers in special and emergent times, but in normal times, states enjoy full freedom and as per subjects assigned to them. Ambedkar describes this very beautifully. He says, one can therefore safely say that the Indian Federation will not suffer the faults of rigidity or legalism. Its distinguishing feature is that it is a flexible federation. Now this is what today we are saying. However, what is being witnessed in last decade or so is an all-out assault on states through many subtle and some direct moves. If the Congress governments abused Article 356 to dismiss opposition-related state governments right from the 1950s, even late Jawaharlal Nehru resorted to it, and Mrs. Gandhi resorted to it on many occasions. For over 5 decades, BJP government today has discovered ingenious way to do so and stifle the states. BJP government is using the governors. Doesn't need 356. From not approving laws passed by duly elected legislatures, in total negation of democracy for indefinite periods, to interfering in law and order and educational institutions, these governors have become law unto themselves. They are partisan in discharging their constitutional role and misuse their discretions on a daily basis. Framers had expected them to be sagacious counselors. Ambedkar was categorical on their position. Governor has no function which is required to discharge either in his discretion or in his individual judgment, and that he must act on ministerial advice is what Ambedkar wanted. And this is what the constitutional framers had wanted. Today, these governors don't listen to the ministerial advice at all. They have their own advice which comes from Delhi, from the Home Ministry, and they act on them on a daily basis. We see that. It's happening in Tamil Nadu, it's happening in West Bengal, it's happening in Jharkhand, it's happening in many states. And it's very unfortunate that this constitutional position, which was supposed to be merely a link between the center and the states, is now being abused in this fashion. The central government has thus succeeded in subduing states, if not preventing them from success in their execution of their policies and actions. See, every political party, let's take an opposition party in Tamil Nadu or West Bengal, they have been elected by electorate because of their policies which they have declared in their manifestos. And they would like to execute these policy decisions by various laws. Now, if the governor is going to sit on the laws passed by the assembly, then they cannot execute their policies. They cannot achieve their objectives. So it becomes extremely, extremely difficult for these political parties to succeed in their objectives. And this is how the party in power, ruling party in power at the center, can easily defeat the opposition parties which are able to gain some headway in few states in the country. Second, in financial matters, the states have been stifled, especially after the introduction of GST. I don't know whether you are aware or not, but as Chief Minister, Mr. Modi opposed GST for almost 10 years. At one stage, he said, over my dead body. Today, the GST is being abused left, right, and center because the state's powers to levy sales taxes has been taken away. So states are really virtually left with only one source of income, prohibition, which unfortunately Gujarat doesn't have because it all goes into the pockets of police officers and politicians. But otherwise, states have a substantial excise duty revenue. But that's not sufficient. Now, what happens is that it is the finance ministry which has to release the funds to the states as per their demands, as per what has been agreed upon discussion between center and particular state. But it's not being released. Every opposition state today is crying for release of those funds which they are entitled to. But the government sits over it. So this is something which is really now another way of stifling the states. Complete negation of federalism. The framers wanted federalism in a true sense. This happens also surprisingly in BJP-ruled states, because today BJP-ruled states are not governed by the local leaders. We all know that BJP-ruled states are governed by the Prime Minister's office. I mean, if any chief minister today in a BJP-ruled state can say that I can take a particular decision and act on it, then I think he might be removed on the next day. So, today, every decision which is to be taken, major decision, has to be approved by the Prime Minister's office. And states are therefore, I mean, even in the BJP state, democracy is virtually non-existent. Yes, the leaders are elected, there is a chief minister, there is a council of ministers, but there is very little role that they can independently play. Now, this is a way of, killing the federalism. And it is virtually turning the country into presidential form of the government, which is exactly what Ambedkar and his colleagues did not want. They specifically chose parliamentary democracy over presidential form of government to bring more responsibility. We are becoming a nation where power is now concentrated in the center with complete irresponsibility. There is no accountability, there is no responsibility. So it's something which we all must ponder about. Constitutions working, therefore, in my view, is not what was envisioned by the leaders. The biggest concerning reason is, of course, today, for these failures of both the form of the government and form of the constitution, is the judiciary. I have been a lawyer for 48 years. My father has been a judge. I respect judiciary. I love judiciary. I enjoyed my time there. But I must say that the single biggest factor for state of affairs today is judiciary. Because judiciary was created as a checks and balance over the executive and the parliament. And it is singularly failing to check either one of them. Judiciary was created for protecting the constitutional and fundamental rights of the citizens. It has singularly failed to protect them. So, it's something which we must ponder about. We must see what the framers really, why did they want an independent judiciary? Framers gave us independent judiciary, keeping it away as much as possible from the control of the executive in appointment and finances. Kanayalal Munshi, the great academician, lawyer, and a novelist, puts it very beautifully when he said, "It is essential that in democracy, the judiciary must be there to adjust the differences between the citizen and citizen, between the state, and between the government and the state. If that independence is not secured, I am sure we would soon drift towards totalitarianism." Look at the framers' anxiety. These were greatest men and women ever to be born. And they were afraid for today's India. They were afraid for us. So he says we will drift towards totalitarianism. Independence of judiciary, he said, demarcates the line between democratic method and totalitarian method. How true those words are. We are fast becoming a totalitarian nation without anybody acknowledging it, without anybody admitting it, and much less without debating it. Mr. Iyengar, one of the distinguished members, called Supreme Court the foundation stone of our liberty. Dr. Ambedkar intervening said, "Sir, there is no doubt that the House in general has agreed that independence of judiciary from executive should be made as clear and definite as we could make it by law." Ambedkar didn't realize that it would be so easy to bend the judiciary. He thought by law he could keep the independence of judiciary. Little did he realize that 75 years later, how we will be as Indians and how we will succumb to every pressure. How we will be willing to convert the power, into the hands of the few. I mean, it's really, he never could have imagined those, because, they had sacrificed. Our generation, I'm sorry, some of you are pre-1947, but those of us who are born after 1947 have no respect for freedom struggle. We don't care a damn about the sacrifices made by thousands and thousands and thousands of Indians in terms of their lives, their liberties, their peace of mind, their resources. We have forgotten them completely. And unless we remember them, we will never be able to appreciate democracy. Democracy, constitution is a revolutionary product. It was a revolution by peaceful means. Mahatma Gandhi led. But those sacrifices, unless we remember them, talk about them, we will never appreciate the constitution. It's a Constituent Assembly was the final culmination of the independence struggle. And that produced this beautiful document after 3 years of debate. 3 years of debate. Rejecting apprehension that this would result in creating imperio, Ambedkar said we want to give judiciary ample independence so that it can act without fear or favor of the executive. I must say today, with great respect to the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, that they definitely act with fear and with favor. I make no bones about it. And you can see it. I mean, look at the way these two young students have been denied bail after 5 years. There is nothing in their case. if before an independent judge, that charge is bound to fail. And the Supreme Court says, no, we can't because national security is involved. I don't know how national security comes into play in this, while giving bail to the others. Whereas all those who actually were responsible for, about encouraging the riots, Minister Anurag Thakur, he said, Gaddaro ko goli maro. Member of Parliament, Mr. Mishra, said कि आपके घर में आकर रेप करेंगे, आप इनको मार दो, कल को मोदी और शाह नहीं होंगे तो क्या होगा हमारा. Mr. Yogi Adityanath repeatedly kept on saying कि ये बोली से नहीं गोली से सुनेंगे. No case against them, no investigation against them. And I mean, I can't believe that our judges are so naive that they want to, gloss over the reality of the situation in the country. It's a matter of great, disappointment, sadness for those of us who love judiciary. Because, 48 years we have Poker Sahib, one of the most respected members of the assembly, he feared, look at his words, it is of the highest importance that judges of the Supreme Court should not be made to feel that their existence or their appointment is dependent upon political considerations or on the will of the political party. Of course, if a judge owes his appointment to a political party, certainly in the course of his career as a judge, also as an ordinary human being, he will certainly be bound to have some consideration for the political views of the authority that has appointed him. I mean, all we are seeing today, the kind of appointments which are being made in Supreme Court and High Court. It's so easy to understand why they bend backwards. Because they have been obliged and they therefore return the obligations. Many of them. Many of them. We have outstanding judges. We have had many outstanding judges. But I must say, since 1992, when judges grabbed the power to appoint judges in the second judge's judgment and created this farcical system called collegium system, they have made the worst of the appointments. And today we have none to criticize, because when government appointed bad judges, we could attack. With collegium, what do we do? So, I mean, it's really, and this phrase in the constitutional provision was clearly that President shall, in consultation with the Chief Justice of India, appoint. During the Constituent Assembly debate, member after member suggested, please paraphrase the word consult with concur. Ambedkar said no. He said, I am not willing to give that power to the Chief Justice, who is a man of many failings. So it was rejected. In second judge's judgment, Supreme Court says, no, the word should be concur. And therefore, the President must concur with the Chief Justice of India in appointments, in High Court and Supreme Court. And what have they done? They have made some of the worst appointments. Forget the, outstanding judges, which are far and few. So this Professor K.T. Shah, a very eminent member and a very vocal member in the Constituent Assembly debate. These debates are worth reading. Some of these members have made amazing contributions. He says, in my opinion, sir, if I may say so with all respect, this constitution concentrates so much power and influence in the hands of Prime Minister in regard to appointment of judges, ambassadors or governors to such an extent that there is every danger to apprehend that the Prime Minister may become a dictator if he chooses to do so. Look at this. Look at the wisdom that these people had, collective wisdom. Ambedkar says at the end, he says, it may sound to be a little arrogant, but he says that with all great respect to future Parliament, I can definitely say that the wealth of knowledge, the wealth of experience that the Constituent Assembly members have, the future Parliament will never possess that. And that's true. We don't have men and women of that integrity, that character, because they all were born out of freedom struggle. Current, parliamentarians are all born out of, hunger for power. They have not made any sacrifices. I don't know of anyone who has made sacrifices in politics, with due respect to my dear friend here. Nobody has made sacrifices. By and large. I mean, there are some exceptional people. So this is what Katie Shah had feared, dictator. To my mind, and as time has proved again and again, this newly discovered power by Supreme Court for themselves have far from securing independence of High Courts and Supreme Courts, made them weak and fearful. Judiciary today is under great challenge. Supreme Court itself has forgotten its bounden duty to protect citizens against violations of their fundamental rights by exercising wider powers under Article 32, which according to Dr. Ambedkar was the heart and soul of the Constitution. Supreme Court is either declining to exercise its power or failing repeatedly in exercising it as per the Constitution. When I used to sit in Supreme Court, many a times the judges will tell that go to High Court under 226, don't come here under 32. Completely forgetting that Article 32 itself is a fundamental right. And if I am challenging an unconstitutional action, Supreme Court is bound to hear me. And Supreme Court has said so in some of the judgments in 50s and 60s. But all that is being lost sight of. And that's why I say that judiciary today has singularly failed us in this. Ambedkar had warned that if the parties put creed above country, our independence will be put in jeopardy a second time and probably be lost forever. If parties put creed above country, now I don't know any party which doesn't put, creed above the country. They are all same, be it BJP, Congress, X, Y, Z. There is no political party which one can really feel proud of that it is really acting for the country, for the citizens, for us. You all seem to see that they are all, running around for power, for themselves and their brothers and their friends and relatives. He asked, what would happen to India's democratic constitution after 20th January 1950? He asked a rhetorical question to himself while, debating. Man was a genius. He answered saying, it's quite possible for this newborn democracy to retain its form, but give place to dictatorship in fact. Look at his words. He answered saying, it's quite possible for this newborn democracy to retain its form, but give place to dictatorship in fact. If there is a landslide, the danger of second possibility becoming actuality is much greater. You don't need a landslide now. You can easily purchase the opposition parties. So you didn't have, a landslide in 2024 election, but yet you are able to govern because everybody has succumbed. And everybody is sharing the spoils of the national wealth. It's easy to circumvent. But this is exactly what this man, great man, had feared, that we will lose our democracy. He forewarned against bhakti in politics. He was a very, very interesting man. He said bhakti is very good for salvation of the soul. But bhakti in politics is a sure path to dictatorship. We have bhakti all around us now in the country. We can see that. So he was against the hero worship. Perhaps he felt that Gandhi ji and Nehru, people worshipped them, and he didn't really like it. And you saw that Congress party had him defeated immediately after we became republic in 1950. It put up candidates against this great man, and he lost elections. So it's not that power has consumed us today. Power has been consuming us since 1950, irrespective of color of the political party. India today is far away in reality from what framers had envisioned, essentially on constitutional goals. This is very important. The constitutional framers were very clear. They said that you may have power, you may be elected in a parliamentary democracy, but you don't have right to govern this country as you like. You must be guided by certain objectives. So they put in the preamble these objectives: justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are the real goals for which every political party in power is expected to function. Justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Now, we see today that each one of these is under challenge. Each one of them. Justice, it's very difficult to say that with 5.5 crore cases pending and with at least 20 years of waiting in every case in court, you can get justice in this country. You can't get justice against the government. You can't get justice against a fellow citizen who has wronged you. You can't get justice in any form. Everybody is yearning for justice, whether he's a worker, whether he's a landlord, whether he's a farmer, whether he's a businessman, whether he's a citizen, whether he's a prisoner. Everybody is yearning for justice. But courts have no time to give that justice. And when they do give, it's seriously flawed. It's seriously flawed. Only recently, if you have read in the newspaper, that in 2002 September, a so-called terrorist attack took place on Akshardham in Gandhinagar. And in 2025, Supreme Court released the accused who were charged with conspiracy in that case. The so-called terrorists were gunned down during the attack, but all others who were charged have been released by the Supreme Court and subsequently by the trial court. Now just imagine how many years they have spent in jail from 2002, September. And the elections took place in December 2002, and of course it was a landslide. So, it's something which one must ponder, that is this what framers wanted? Justice is very important in a society which is governed by rule of law, a society where there is peace and harmony. For that, justice and justice delivery system must be most effective. We have failed. The framers wanted it. Equally, take liberty. If we can just pick up people like this, what liberty and life? If we can kill 600 people in UP in fake encounters without being questioned by the Human Rights Commission. One question I asked Human Rights Commission chairman again and again. They just have no answer. Supreme Court sits, its eyes wide shut. So does the High Court. Nobody cares. So who has decided that Mr. X should be killed? And people justify it. We have now reached a situation where I find again and again people talking to me and saying, oh, it's good. We have got rid of certain bad people. But who has decided these are bad people? Bring them to justice, bring them to court, let the court say that they are bad. And if the court feels that they are so bad that they deserve to be given death sentence or life sentence, be it. But if you are going to allow it to be decided by the politicians and the police, then I think the country is not safe. None of us are safe. Anybody can be picked up tomorrow and encountered. Now, is this what framers wanted? When they spoke of Article 21, life and liberty, they were very clear that it must be protected to the hilt by the judiciary. State cannot touch us. State cannot take away our liberty except in accordance with law. But today state does, aided by the judiciary, which is worse. Which is worse. Equality. 78 years. Today, look at the condition of Dalits in this country. Look at the condition of women. We are still a feudal nation after 78 years of independence. Where do we have, just imagine that women who joined the armed forces had to fight for a permanent commission which they got in 2022. I fought some of those cases. And when those young women used to come to me and say how much they have sacrificed to join the armed forces, and they were being denied permanent commission. Because some men, thought that women don't deserve permanent commission in the armed forces. So, Dr. Hansa Mehta in the Constituent Assembly had feared that for centuries we have treated our women very poorly. There have been no rights of these women. And I dare say that situation has not improved today. Go to villages, go to most homes, and their contribution is the most in a family. From morning to night, woman works for the family. So, equality, look at the status of the minority community today. I mean, what equality we are talking about if, today, in Gujarat, where I come from, every Muslim has to live only in certain ghettoed areas. I dare say even Azim Premji cannot buy a house where I have a house in Ahmedabad and Baroda. Somebody bought, a friend of mine sold a house in Baroda racecourse area to a good, very respected Muslim family. And after 1 month, they were forced to reverse the transaction. And the registrar was suspended. So Jains today say that in my building no non-Jain can purchase. Parsis say in my building no non-Parsi can come. And we Hindus say that all Muslims must be on one side of the cities, villages and towns. What equality we are talking about? I mean, is this what, the sacrifices were made by the freedom fighters? Was there any distinction in the fight? There was no distinction. The Muslims and Hindus all fought side by side. And I proudly sometimes remind many friends in this country that it was under a Muslim ruler, Bahadur Shah Zafar, that 1857 mutiny was fought. And it's a sad commentary that the others did not come to his aid. It's a sad commentary. So, equality is something which is so essential in a society, which is singularly missing. Fraternity like that. According to Ambedkar, these were way of life. And he called, for example, liberty, equality and fraternity as a trinity. He said, you can't divorce one from the other. And if you divorce, it's a political disaster for the country. He said, liberty, equality and fraternity must all stand side by side. Is it so today in our country? We need to introspect. The whole purpose of this debates, Constituent Assembly debates, is to understand what was the nature of a nation that they had dreamt we should be. What did they want to create? I mean, it's not enough to say, we have 5,000 years of history. Of course we have 5,000 years of history. But what about our present? I mean, why do we live in past glory when our present is so dismal, according to me? Yes, some of us are fortunate and we can enjoy a good life, etc. But if the government admits, Prime Minister repeatedly says proudly, कि मैं 81 करोड़ से ज़्यादा लोगों को मुफ्त राशन देता हूँ और मेरा वादा है कि अगले 5 साल तक मुफ्त राशन देता रहूँगा. What does it mean? That 70% people are living below poverty line. You are not trying to make them stand up on their feet by creating jobs, because you are incapable of creating jobs. Today, more than 200 million youth are sitting at home alone without jobs, boys and girls. But you can dole out. You have Ladli Bena, you have this Bena, you have that uncle, that auntie. I mean, is this what we want? I was just telling Mr. Chinoy that Ambedkar advisedly did not agree to use of the expression socialism into a preamble, into the constitution. He neither wanted secularism nor socialism. It was Mrs. Gandhi which introduced them. But is this the kind of a socialism that we should be proud of? Or we want a socialism where we can create equal opportunities for all? That's equality. Article 39 of the Constitution, the directive principles, the framers were very clear that we want these directive principles to guide those in power. So some of the most important ones are that equal opportunities to all, equitable distribution of resources. I am not against Ambani and Adani, but you can't have Ambani and Adani when 100 crore people are living below poverty line. I mean, India today can boast of the highest number of billionaires in the world. I didn't know that. I saw some news item the other day. We have the highest number of billionaires in the world. Side by side with these 100 crore people who are living below poverty line. What a contradiction. Now, this is something which is, very important for us to understand. What we don't have, we must remember, there is no freedom to be free in the real sense in this country. We must have freedom to be free. Unless we have that, there is a big problem. Today, freedom of speech, look at it. You criticize anybody. This is not to do with BJP alone. Mamta, if you criticize her, then police will come and arrest. You criticize Stalin, somebody will come and arrest. And Munshi used one beautiful sentence in his debate on freedom of speech. He says criticism is an essence of democracy. But our, kind politicians have forgotten that this is the essence of the democracy, the criticism. We have a right to criticize them. And if we stop criticizing, believe you me, we will be failing our forefathers who sacrificed for us, and we will be really losing the democracy that we all love. We must therefore stand up and criticize as much as we can. We have today, of course, freedom of speech, but after that speech, we have no freedom. So that's a contradiction we have today. Again, to quote Munshi, I love Munshi because, he was a founder of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. He was a great lawyer, and he has been one of the greatest novelists in the Gujarati language. Some of his books, Jai Somnath, Patani Prabhuta, are world class. Absolutely world class. So, a man who had, Munshi says, we have unfortunately in this country legislatures with large majorities facing very serious problems, and naturally there is a tendency to pass legislation in a hurry which gives sweeping powers to the executive and the police. Imagine 78 years ago he said this. UAPA, CAA, just imagine. Supreme Court judgment giving ED, weaponizing ED. Justice Khanwilkar's great judgment. ED today can enter anybody's house and, do whatever they want to arrest anybody without any. Only thing, they don't find the addresses of the BJP leaders, surprisingly. So, not surprising, but disturbing. Professor K.T. Shah puts it, liberty of the person, ever since the consciousness of civil liberties have come upon the people. Look at this man. Liberty of the person, ever since the consciousness of civil liberties have come upon the people, has been the main battleground of the autocrats and those fighting against them. The autocrat, the despot, has always wished, whenever he was bankrupt of any other argument, to shut up those who did not agree with him, and with slightest inconvenience and even embarrassment, to imprison or arrest without trial or charge. Does it not resonate with what is happening today? But Munshi envisioned it far from state being today. Is individual for the state or state for the individual? That's a question, political analysts always ask. We have converted our country, a state which lives for, rather than living for individual, has converted individuals to live for the state. It is a very sad commentary. State's existence is for us, not vice versa. Ambedkar himself repeatedly warned against a war with Muslims and said they are an explosive force which can blow up the fabric of the nation. He said nation must be governed by, that nation cannot be governed by force all the time. A nation which has to be governed by force all the time is no nation, according to me. Our leaders speak in the name of Sardar and Ambedkar all the time, but have no time to understand them. Because Sardar had said, and I quote Sardar, Sardar said, to all those. And surprisingly, very few people know that Sardar Patel was the one who was heading the Committee on Fundamental Rights and Committee on Minority Rights. And Sardar Patel says, when he presented the report on the minority rights, Article 25, 26 and 29, 30, he says, those who happen to be in majority, he warns us, the Hindus, those who happen to be in majority, please think about what minorities feel and how we in their position would feel if we were treated in the manner in which they are treated. Look at this man who is being worshipped with a tall statue. And every day is being forgotten. Every day minorities are facing the wrath. So, take for example religion. Framers were very clear. Speaker after speaker said that state should not identify itself with any religion. There must be complete freedom of religion, and we all have. We all have under Articles 25 and 26, freedom of conscience, freedom to profess whatever religion we want to profess. And I mean, we are very fortunate in this country that we have some of the most beautiful religions. Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Hinduism, you name, I mean, they are so beautiful religions. They have all survived for, centuries, maybe thousands of years. But these framers were very clear. State should stay away from it. What do we see today? The state constantly identifying itself with a particular religion, building temples. I mean, this was the exactly thing which framers did not want the state to do. So, you may say today that, oh, Nehru did not agree to contribute to Somnath temple's, Jeernoddhar. But Nehru never said, he said, don't use state funds. You can raise funds, but don't use state funds, because state must be divorced from any particular religion. We all forget that Nehru spent 11 years in jail. No, you have to respect him for that alone. Everybody has faults, but look at the joys that Nehru gave us. He gave us a democracy which has survived till today. All these people who speak, in criticizing Nehru, forget one thing, that the foundation of democracy were laid by this great man. Many countries which became independent, when we became independent, lost their independence. In Southeast Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. But India's democracy, except for that 2 years period, and of course since 2014, has really stood the test of time. So, you have to you have to understand all this. Media is another where, why was media so important according to framers? Because we citizens have a right to receive information. It's not just media's right to, give the information. It is the converse, citizens' right to receive truthful information. Today, you have virtually bought over the media, because every day you find first 2 pages are of great leaders of this country, because they are being given for those 2 pages, crores and crores of rupees. Once you receive that, why would you criticize? It's very difficult temptation. So you then continue to, find every good thing about what is happening, and even if it is not good thing, you portray it as a good thing. And in small corner somewhere, Pratap Bhanu Mehta will, poor fellow, write and, tell us the truth. But is that enough? What I am trying to say is that enough? Look at the electronic media. I mean, it's worse. Print media at least has, Indian Express, has, Hindu, sometimes Times of India and Economic Times do put some good articles once in a while. There are some good vernacular newspapers like Gujarat Samachar, which is fiercely independent, despite the fact that one of its proprietors was arrested recently. But, so, media, which was supposed to be a, fourth estate, has failed completely. And framers wanted media to really play a great role. Supreme Court recognized it since 1950, right from the first day. So, look at the institutions. The framers, if you read Constituent Assembly debate on CAG, Controller of Auditor General, you will be astonished. They put CAG on the same platform as, same level as Supreme Court judges. They said the role of this CAG is so important for our society because governments will waste money. And in those days, they talked about thousands. Today, we are talking about thousands of crores. But those thousands also were worrying them that these thousands or lakhs should not be wasted. Today, our country can buy, planes worth thousands of crores of rupees for our leaders from public funds, so that our leaders can travel to 90 countries in the world. But is that how we should? Today, no politician travels in a commercial airline. You rarely see them. Most times they are traveling by chartered planes. Or they're private. Every government has bought private planes. Every government has bought helicopters. As if our ministers are so busy that they can't travel by road or by bus or by train. But at whose cost? I mean, we are still a poor nation. We are not a rich nation. We are not a rich nation. So, but, CAG was specifically created. Look at Election Commission. Constitutional framers gave us, right to vote. Adult franchise was recognized as a basic right of every citizen. If you are a citizen above the age of 21 then, now it's reduced to 18. And if law has not declared you to be disqualified, then you are entitled to vote. Today we have to justify that I have a right to vote. Appear before Election Commission with a form and with some 100, supplements and say, sir, I am a citizen, please allow me to vote. And those Johnnies say, no, you are not a citizen because this is not tick marked. And Supreme Court is sitting, watching it. What a shocking thing. It's a fundamental right, it's a basic right of parliamentary democracy that every one of us has. Nobody can take it away, not this Election Commission. And framers were very clear. They wanted to create a fiercely independent Election Commission so that no political party can control it. Little did they know that by appointment process, the governments of the time will be able to control them. We need more TN sessions, I suppose, but we can't find them, and we won't appoint them, even if we find them. On 25th November 1949, the last day of Constituent Assembly debate, Rajendra Prasad, who was the president of the Assembly and India's first president, warned that the work that confronts nation will be more difficult now than the past because, now see his words, because we did not have any conflicting claims to reconcile, no laws and fishes to distribute, no powers to share. Today we have everything. And that is why democracy is failing. Look at this man's words. He says the work that confronts nation will be more difficult than past because we did not have any conflicting claims to reconcile, no laws and fishes to distribute, no powers to share. Ambedkar's parting warning was, there is great danger of things going wrong. This man was a different planet. There is great danger of things going wrong. Times are fast changing. People, including our own, are being moved by new ideologies. They are getting tired of government by the people. They are getting tired of government by the people. They are prepared to have government for the people. We are having governments for the people. Those in power, their relatives, their families. This is exactly what Ambedkar had warned, that no. And he says, stand up, fight against this. Don't allow this country to have government, for the people. Let it be always a government by the people, of the people. This was his parting warning. But it was one member, Shyamanandan Sahai, who had very prophetic and dire words on that day. He says, we have now given to ourselves a constitution. We are now independent. But this is not the end of our troubles. It is the beginning of our troubles. And in 2026, we can certainly say that we have compounded those troubles manifold times. Constitution of India will survive, of course, in the textbooks and in the shelves. But its spirit is dying, if not dead. Thank you very, very much. I thank all of you for listening to me very patiently. It's been a great privilege. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Mr. Aspichunoy. I would have much rather preferred to sit there and listen to you rather than make you listen to what, But it's been a pleasure and privilege, Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, all of you. Thanks a lot.